Good day, my name is Mark Kirus. Today I'm going to report the book of Daniel W. Mead entitled Contracts, Specification, and Engineering Relation. So my topic is on the chapter 20, is entitled also the designs and specification for engineering and architectural works. So the first part of this topic, of this chapter rather, was the topic the investigation. So investigation, prior to the design of any plant or structure, a thorough investigation should be made of the nature of the material which must be excavated or moved, of the foundation on which the structure must rest. So, and of the material into or through which channels, foundation of piles, caissons, or other structure must be driven. So, the quantities, and the physical condition of such material should be determined so far as practicable. So, it is often that the decision to build or to carry out the improvement is followed by immediately by a demand of construction at such an early date that this proper examination of the condition is not possible, such as haste in construction is undesirable and almost invariable entails extra expense. So the failure to make a suitable investigation of this condition is to secure the desirable amount of information. So we easily get that if you fail to make an investigation, of course you have lacking a big amount of information in your designs or work. Example, the possible danger of your works, or any lack of money rather to the contract. And so both for the use of the engineer in designing and estimating the cost of the work, and for the use of the bidder in the preparation for his proposal. So it is often due to false economy on the part of the owner of the management for the company who proposes the construct of the work. So the cost of thorough preliminary investigation is often considerable. So, so it is very considerable also a necessity for the work. So it is sometimes assumed that any extensive preliminary examination is unnecessary. So when when the engineer yields to necessity or persuasion and fails to secure the proper information, he is nevertheless blamed for any trouble and expense which may follow. So if the bids received based on insufficient information are unduly high, or if the quantities estimated on the same uncertain basis are found seriously in error, so he is blamed for troubles which he has had no means of preventing. So, therefore, the investigation is one of the important part of building design, because you need to investigate all the relation properties in building design. For example, the expenses, the budget, the workers, how it works, how it plans, and the safetiness of the workers. So that will be conclude the investigation. The second part of the topic, chapter 20, is the unsatisfactory practice. So it is an unfortunately common mistaken practice to require the contractor to assume all the risk and the responsibilities concerning the character, and sometimes even concerning the relative amount of the different kind of materials. So good sense it seems to warrant the conclusion that in dealing with intelligent men, something cannot be secured for nothing. An experiment and experience has demonstrated that whatever such an attempt is made usually result in unnecessarily increased cost. So an intelligent contractor, if he bids at all on plans and specifications which are uncertain or manifestly unfair, will add a sufficient sum to compensate him for the uncertainties and the unfair treatment, so he must expect, and to be safe, he will usually add more than enough to cover the probable expense. The client does pay more and usually much more than he would under definite plans and specification. So for the conclusion of the unsatisfactory practice is the most mistaken practice is to require the contractor to assume all the risks and responsibilities. That is the most common practice. So we must also responsible for what we're doing as an engineer, as a part of the contract, as a worker, and we must accept all the risk and take precautions. So in order to prevent this one, we must put some extra money on our project, so that we make the a high standard project, not so that we have a less less danger project, because we have a high high maintenance and a high standard project. So that is the unsatisfactory practice. And now for the so the third part of the chapter 20 is the difficulties. So to make a thorough investigation of the actual condition on a project, to determine the quality and quantity of the various kinds of materials to be encountered, and to show them by plans, drawing, and definite specification, involves not only time and expenses but also the responsibility for any accidental misstatement of the exact facts. So underground conditions are very uncertain and cannot be readily determined even by elaborate borings. So variation in the strata are liable to occur which will not be determined even though the borings are fairly close together, and it's evident that such investigation must have practical limit. Any departure from the positive information given may result in demands for extra compensation, and even a slight variation which might not actually affect the cost of the work will give an unfair contractor an opportunity for excessive demands for extra compensation. So, whereas in the contractor is required to assume the responsibility for damage, no such claim can be maintained. So, it is believed that this danger is one of the most chief reason why so much responsibility is frequently forced on the contractor, even when it is recognized that such responsibility entails extra expenses. So, in difficulties, so there are so many difficulties in working a project. First, it will be the safetyness of the worker, and the if the if the and also the money on the project and the budget. That is the main problem of the difficulties. So that to to lessen the difficulties, it some project or contract are the contractor are burden the responsibilities if someone get hurt or someone will be endangered. So that will be on the difficulties. So the fourth part of the chapter 20 is the investigation for sewers. So in investigation for sewers, the nature of the material which will probably be encountered is usually determined by borings or soundings. Such as material are often classified similarly to those on railroad excavation, and on this basis payments are ordinarily made. So this limits the chances taken by the contractor, and to a much greater extent than where he is left to estimate the varying amounts of such material on the basis of the borings such have been made. The unevenness of the strata throughout the extent of the solar system is so great that it is usually inexpedient to take a sufficient boring to determine with accuracy the amount of rock which will be encountered. So the variation in rock should not be at the risk of the contractor so far as amount are concerned, and the expense incurred in making the necessary borings will be more than returned by the lower cost. So in sewer work, the greatest item of uncertainty usually arises not through the question of rock or earth, but from the variation of the qualities of soil through the presence of water. So these materials may consist of first earth more or less easily caving. Second is earth or clay consul- consolidated and free from cavings. Or three, sand with or without water. And four, fine sand or quicksand and water. So it is usually inexpedient for the engineer to offer the above classification and questions for these materials and conditions, while they should be determined as clearly as practicable and given to the contractor as data for use preparing his bid, must usually be at the contractor risk. So for the conclusion, so investigating for a sewer design is so very difficult because we are dealing underground, so we must make the project more stability and more durable, like during earthquakes. So for sewers, the most problem we encounter is the kind of the soil soil because it is underground. So we may we may encounter a hard rock, for example, or sometimes sometimes a quicksand or a sand or a water or a cave that is difficult to make a hole to build a sewers so that our drainage system is complete. So sewers for the our project is very important because this is where all our going out our all the waste materials are going out like water, foods, and etc. So the fifth part of the chapter 20 is the basis of designs. So in every technical endeavor, the object involved is the accomplishment of certain definite result at a minimum expense, either immediate or ultimate. If a structure is to be built, both utility and certain degree of beauty are usually involved. If permanent, it should not be unsightly, and it is utility may demand any degree of artistic development from a plain but slightly structure to those structure which are created only for their artistic merit. In each case, however, the object is to accomplish the maximum utility for the minimum expense. No unnecessary expense is unwarranted. So the structure must be safe, and the degree of safety must be measured by the possible disastrous result of failure. So factor of safety must be introduced and are made necessary by variation in strength of materials. So uncertainties of manufacturing processes and uncertainties of loading and consequent strains to which the structure may be subjected and to various contingencies to which it may be exposed. So the limitation of the strength and the extent of which artistic consideration will prevail will always be questions of experience and judgment. And while this should be fixed with intelligence, so in most cases, a doubt may remain as to whatever the limits are too small or too great. So safety must be balanced against expense and the expense considered must always involve both first cost and upkeep. So, in operating plans, questions of efficiency also rise. So, first cost and upkeep are important, but the running expense must be considered, and greater expense of installment and maintenance may be warranted by greater or more satisfactory output. So in all cases, a balance between expense and result must be struck, and man, the technical man is responsible for establishing a proper equilibrium between these various factors. So for conclusion, for the basis of a designs, we must consider the expenses, of course, to our to our to our designs. So we must a better design has a better budget, and a if you have a low budget, we have a um, better design for that budget only. So the basis of designs, for short, is the money of the owner or of, uh, or the owner of the project. So the contractor made the design for that budget only. If the owner are if the owner want a much luxury design, so he must put another budget on the design. So that is the basis of designs.